if we had
Young people for young people.
Yeah, that's part of the problem actually.
yeah.
That young people and old people, maybe young people, not enough part of that conversation.
Yeah,
We
someone
are
else is
hanging out
deciding
talking
it.
about it. Hi and welcome to the first episode of Quest for Better Futures. We are hanging out in our office in the Learning Observatory, and generally the space is about connection and just being able to have a free flowing conversation. So there are lots of different podcasts happening right now. So why did we come up with this bright idea of doing another one? Because I guess we have a lot of time on our hands and we want to, come up with new ideas and do fun things.
External facing meetings.
We thought we can do an external facing meeting.
Everyone can see how we talk.
I'm thinking like anyway, as people, we all listen to so many podcasts during our commute. We may as well get a feeling by listening to this podcast that we can change this world. So yeah, that's why I think we should do it.
And there's a lot of work that is happening internally. We just thought that maybe we can speak about the work that we're doing while we're doing it. So, because of that also.
Yeah, I think that's an important one, that speak about the work while you're doing it rather than speak about it afterwards or speak about it when you want to do something. I think that's an important part of just reflecting on what's going on, why is it happening. So I think that's a good approach, I think, that we are trying out as well.
But tell me, why the name Quest for Better Futures? Why did we come up with this name? Why did we decide that?
Namrata wants to say something.
Was that by cue? Sorry.
I thought you wanted to. I genuinely thought you did.
No.
I was thinking, like, on a serious note, generally there is a lot of like anxieties and fear around the future, especially like a lot of this conversation around climate change and technology transformations. So it's always nice to build something more alternative as a narrative and think about optimism and opportunities through these. So I guess that's also an intent of why we're doing what we're doing and what we hope to get out of this.
Yeah, and I think just building on to what you're saying and what Aakash was saying, that we should talk about things as and when they're happening. When we're looking out, it's usually a lot of things around climate, technology, social, cultural paradigms that are shifting. So we have like, I think broadly two ways of looking at things. Either we continue doing the things we've always been doing, or we look at doing something different. We actually be bold and say, hey, if there's a future out there, maybe we can think of different futures and we can create the futures that we desire, and hence the quest for better futures.
Very nice.
Also has quest in the name.
Yes.
Yeah, we should retain that legacy. Lots of quests in our own lives and lots
We're
of
always
quests.
on a quest. Or for something.
And also, just to add one more thing, when we speak about the future, we also think that there is only one future that's there, that's out there. So the reason we've done this, we're doing this podcast, and the reason we've said Quest for Better Futures is to say that there are many futures that exist. And we want to move towards a better version of that future. Because right now, the way we talk about the future, it's very dystopian. Even the media, even the movies, Black Mirror, or whatever is coming out, it's all very dystopian, or it's very utopian that everything is going to be rosy and every problem is going to get solved. Who's taking accountability for solving it? We don't know.
One of the things we want to do is this idea of personal futuring. You always start with the self, and how do you really bring the self into the larger world that you're existing in, and maybe we do a small activity where we pick up different prompts and reflect on whatever the prompts are asking us to reflect on, almost like the Dumb Sharad's version of the quest for better futures, where you pick up a chit and answer a question,
Just a minute.
or it's
Future in
just a minute.
I'll pass.
Why are you laughing?
Just because.
Who's gonna start?
Quite a googly question. I can start.
Go ahead.
So my question is, what if leadership roles in all spaces, private and government, can only be taken up by women in 2047? A very promising future, I must say. What kind of a world would that be? One, I'm also equating like women in leadership with maybe more feminine style of leadership. I think like one, there'll be more pay parity, gender pay parity. I also think like in the salary structure, like how you have a housing allowance, there'll be an allowance for household chores.
Oh, that's a good
So women can then afford to have like childcare, they can afford to have like people who can help them with their household work. So they can have more time for leisure. I think there'll be more women out in public spaces like marrowing their addas and drinking chai by the street side. That's the kind of world it will be, and I think it'll also have more space for diversity. And I think this whole obsession with standardization and scale with standardization, maybe like that'll go down a bit, and we'll have space for more nuance, more diversity, more empathy. I think, yeah.
Okay, on that note, my question is also related to women, so maybe I'll pick that up. It says, what if in 2047, because of the population decline in the future, women are mandated to reproduce by a certain age as part of nation building? I don't know if that's too far out in the future.
This future is already here.
Yeah, this is already here.
It's happening.
Kind of. In China, they're saying that they had this one-child policy to kind of
They've reversed
regulate
it now,
population.
yeah.
They're trying to now mandate that, as opposed to saying you can have only one child. I think in Singapore, they were giving incentives for people to have children because they wanted the economy to kind of progress.
Age is also called out.
Age is not, but there are like incentives for people to have more children, or it's not come to a policy stage, but it may. So it says what kind of a world that would be. The immediate thought goes to a very dystopian thing, like anyone who's seen and read Handmaid's Tale, of where like women who can reproduce are herded, shepherded, hunt down, cut down on social, that idea of working, bank accounts, and then you're just machines to reproduce. But I think maybe cute from the question that was Neha's, that in 2047, maybe there'll be more women in decision-making spaces and policy spaces. So if I have to really do a quest for a better future, maybe women scientists will find ways to have, babies artificially. Maybe women scientists will mandate policies that can reverse.
Artificial intelligence will come into your conflict of your prime career time.
Yeah, so that it doesn't come all of that. Maybe women decision makers will make policies which are more favorable to women, that they have the first right of choice to go back to work, equal household, chores for men. Maybe if decision making is, if your future happens, then maybe this future will be different. So yeah, I tend to,
that is true.
the immediate is dystopian, but I think if that can happen, then this may happen or may happen differently.
Cool. Should I go next, or you want to add anything to women ruling this world? Okay. I have a question which gives me both dystopia and utopia, but I'll read it. It says, what if in 2047 soil quality has gone down considerably and everyone produces their own food at home, which is synthetically cultivated? So,
Wow.
I'm thinking in a podcast with Quest for Better Futures. For Quest for Better Futures, should I answer it with dystopia or utopia? But yeah, I think the idea of soil quality depleting doesn't sound good and fun. So that gives me
Also not too far in the future either.
It's happening.
Yeah.
We have kids working on prototypes for this.
Yeah, so that gives me a fair bit of anxiety. But if I was to really imagine what this could look like, I was thinking, imagine like everybody becomes a food scientist. You're able to like grow a perfect, balanced, healthy diet at home, personalized to your needs, personalized to your medical reports, if that's what it needs to be. I think one could be very experimental about the kind of, you could create your own food and vegetables and fruits, and mix things together. And even like be more experimental, make the food that you don't like, the taste of it you don't like, but the nutritional value is good, so you could change the taste of that fruit. So imagine like maybe having an apple which tastes like a chocolate, but still has the nutritional value.
Of an
right?
apple.
So it still has like eating an apple keeps the doctor away, but just like tastes so much more better. So yeah, those kinds of things could be a lot of fun to imagine. And yeah, and I was thinking like all the homes would have some like interesting vertical gardens or like modern art type installations at home, which are all your like hanging gardens and growing pods and things like that, and your microwaves could become your personal butlers and could read your moods of the day and cook for you.
Cook for you.
And even cook based on your dietary requirements. So yeah, it could be a lot of fun.
I mean, I have hope based on what I'm seeing the young kids
Young
also,
people.
because they're all picking up on these issues, right? So
Yeah.
When you were talking about all of this, it sounds exciting, but I think as also someone who's deeply connected with gardening and nature, I mean, the feeling that I had was a feeling of maybe disconnect. So maybe some of us may go back to the older ways, embrace the older ways, because there is wisdom in history, there is wisdom in the ways of doing things.
And also just
So-
this whole process of nurturing your harvest and your plants and your trees. I guess that joy of it.
The joy,
maybe
it's just
would be
it's
better.
life
And the hard
itself.
work it takes also,
Yeah.
like then bearing those fruits feels so much more worth it, I think. So yeah, some of those may have to be also reimagined.
Yeah, it's actually life itself. I think the idea of growing is life itself, and maybe the space that we've set up is an example of some of that as well.
You say food futures?
Since you're so into food also.
Yeah.
There is a lot to say, but nothing to say at some level, because not because of I don't have ideas around it, just that I feel that the food crisis that the world is facing because of the the haves and have-nots, and people are not getting enough food to eat is also a reality. And sometimes I wonder whether are we thinking enough about futures of those who don't have access to food? And while there is a lot of imagination about what food can be like for different people, I think there isn't enough imagination of how to actually feed more people. So, yeah.
Maybe you can
Who will
address
get
that
to-
in
who
your
will-
food futures.
No, but who will get to grow their own food and
Yeah.
who will not get
Yeah.
to grow their own food in this future? Like soil, who is dependent on the soil quality? Is soil a common public good? All of these questions are important to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the community future of food, where people could be growing food together? They could be cooking for each other. They could be taking care of other people's needs as well. So I feel that sort of moving from this individualistic idea of future of say synthetic food to what does it mean to be in a community that cares about the soil, cares about what we eat, and provides each other the time and space. Like even people eating alone, and loneliness is going to be such a big thing in the future, and food as a catalyst that brings people together, that breaks the feeling of being alone and brings people together. I think that's another important part of food futures, or future where synthetic can not just be about what we eat, but how we live will become more synthetic, maybe because we are living and connecting through screens and less through people who we actually connect with more organically. And sort of, can you create conditions for those serendipitous interactions that make things more natural and make you feel more alive?
Mine says, what if in 2047 people are not allowed to own private vehicles?
Very good.
I to want this. Let me tell you very, very honestly, I'm very happy with this future. We don't need to own private vehicles. Oh my God, the amount of, have you seen the ads that come out for cars? They're not for cars. sell a lifestyle, and earlier they used to be targeted to men, so they'll be hypersexualized, you know, all those things. And what is about owning the biggest car possible to show, like have an image कि मैं ही हूँ, मैंने जीत लिया ये रेस, मेरे को टेस्ला चाहिए, मेरे को ये चाहिए, वो चाहिए. Instead of that, instead of putting money in owning the biggest car there is, why don't we invest money in public transport, make our public transport better? Like all these, Bangalore is dying because of the traffic, Delhi is dying because of the pollution, Bombay is dying, maybe indirectly, but yes.
Bombay dying.
Public transport, last mile connectivity, like we'll have to work on that if we are to remove we are to remove private vehicles. And then everyone is using public transport, and then what you're saying, that those synthetic connections, they will reduce, because in public transport people will interact and speak and go to work together, etc., etc. Like,
So like in all style quest, we have to reflect on things. So let's reflect on what we reflected on, ki kya hua, or what happened when we did this futuring, personal futuring or group futuring. Are young people also thinking, have this space? Are they thinking about the future?
We did one episode with young people, which you'll all get to hear.
What happened is,
It's full of young people actually.
Yeah, so I can tell a little bit of like sneak peek into what I gathered when I spoke to some of the young people, and especially the kind of young people we work with at Quest. I think there is obviously a very strong idea of success, you know, and hence a lot of young people, and I travel across, you know, states in all the ITIs that we work with. And this obsession with having a stable, secure government job is so strong as a narrative still, because that's what is equated as an idea of success. So I feel like all young people think that that's the right thing to do, but at the same time they recognize that that's not what they aspire from, what they want to be and who they want to be. So there is that tension that you constantly experience in their way of being, of what they're being told to do and what is the right thing to do. But so I feel like all of them want to get this job and get it done with, and then on the side figure their side gigs, which kind of talks to their aspirations and what they want to do in the future and who they want to be. And really, and I've also heard young people talk about things like, you know, our education institutions are not making us ready for the future. What they're teaching us is not what the world, where the world is going. It's still stuck in the time machine. So a lot of them have gone to digital means of learning, figuring things from YouTube, figuring things from different mentors that they're speaking to. So there is a little bit of an anxiety that they experience. Also, like, I think they also hear these narratives around climate change and how AI will take away all the jobs. So there is a fear as well. The idea of success is so strongly ingrained for them to fit into the society. Getting a job is important, getting a government job is important, having a stable income is important. All of those things are the parameters of success the society is imposing on us.
But I think that, I mean, while they are borrowed futures, and like what I hear from younger people, and it's a much younger age group as well, because they're still in secondary schools and are not necessarily so bogged down by what's happening around them. But I think even the borrowed futures from parents comes from a space of optimism, because they want a different life for themselves. So I was just sharing a metro ride with a young girl from the 9th standard, and she said that my mother really wants me to not become like her, and therefore she's investing in my education, and she wants me to do something and become like a, even though her mother is someone who is, you know, who has learned like tailoring by herself and is the only one in her community who is making an earning for herself. So her mother's a great role model, but her mother doesn't want her to become like her. And she's like, so that, and her hope for the future is that I should do something which my mother is not doing. Yeah. So yeah, I think like there's definitely, and kids also see that change. Like they see how it was different for their parents and how it is different for them in terms of the opportunities they have today, or how the world has changed around them. So they're able to see differences, and they want things to be different as well. But maybe the how of it and all of that is still fuzzy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. and maybe they don't realize how fast the world is changing and therefore what all the possibilities could be. I think like maybe that's part of the limiting narrative in some ways. So yeah.
And yeah, their exposures are limited, which also then limits their imaginations, I feel. So that's really what requires more wings, I feel.
Yeah. But I think another interesting thing is also just to work on individual mindsets, right? Like a lot of young people are also growing up with this belief that abilities are innate. We can't like learn new things. Yeah. If I grow up with this belief that I'm not smart enough, then I really internalize that belief, and that inhibits me from even trying new things. So how do we create opportunities for young people where they can overcome their own limiting beliefs? They can actually, you know, see the potential that they have in themselves. I feel like those are the kind of things which are more important for young people to even have an imagination of what they can do in the future.
So why use this future lens? I mean, in our own work, I think that is something that maybe a lot of, you know, questions may be there. Why futures?
When the present needs so much work.
That we are so obsessed with what's going on today. That why use this futures lens?
So I think how like the current society is positioned or created or is working, basically young people are being put on assembly line saying that okay, you just have to think about yourself, get a job that pays well, that pushes the family out of, or that some social mobility happens, and that is all that you need to do. You just need to get a job and earn money. So that is a very personal, like you're separated from the world in a way. For example, like there are many dominant narratives or dominant things that are happening in the world, be it climate change, be it AI. Like for example, Elon Musk in 2014 said that AI is our biggest existential threat. That is a narrative that has been put out in the world, and now everyone is sort of moving towards that narrative in a way, has accepted it without question. Or let's say with climate change also, that we only need to reduce waste and plant more trees is one narrative that we've all accepted, and this is what is being percolated in educational institutes as well. In your curriculum, that is what is being talked about. It's very individualized, but nobody is talking about what does it mean for us as a community. Can we also question these narratives? Can we also question these futures that are being presented to us? We just passively accept these futures and move towards them. This future, singular future, we passively accept and move towards. So the idea of future thinking basically is that if we are being presented with these visions of a singular future, can we as communities, can we question them and think and explore alternatives? Do we want this future? Like there are people in some decision making positions who are deciding for the world, the country, the community, the state.
There is also, do I feel part of that future? Because most of the times I'm like, this future is not for me. I'm not included in that future.
Yeah, well. I was not asked if I want this or not. In our 2022 to 2023, when we went on the ground for our research, what we did was we saw young people in Assam, Gujarat and Odisha, they were struggling with climate change. They were speaking about climate change. Like in Assam, they were talking about floods. In Gujarat, they were talking about heat. In Odisha, they were talking about cyclones. But when they were thinking about their personal futures, it was again that narrative that I want a job and I want to become an IPS officer, IAS officer, whatever government job. So there we made them sort of think about we contextualize their personal futures in their community futures to make them think about, okay, what would be the future of their state, their district in terms of climate change? Where is it that we are moving, A, and where is it that you want to move, B? So when they started thinking of these futures, these let's say climate futures which may be dystopian because of their present is also dystopian, they started thinking of ways in which we should mitigate that and we shouldn't reach those futures. They started questioning those narratives and they started sort of thinking, okay, we have certain ideas, we have certain visions, and we need to now take these visions to policymakers so that our voice also gets heard in these policy making decisions. So that was one thing that young people were doing. They were thinking about alternates where these dystopian futures would not exist, where everyone can sort of move towards a more inclusive and just desired future as their communities.
But sometimes, some of this can also be very tokenistic. कि हाँ सुन लिया जाके थोड़ा बहुत बोल दिया. The actual, decision making or the control is still, with people who are driving it. So while we can say, yeah, let's speak to young people and ask them to imagine these possibilities, how do you really bring those people also in the role of decision making, where say politicians, how many young people are politicians, or how many young people are aspiring to go into that role, is also something one should think about, that what are all the different problem of things that are keeping the problem intact, and how does futures thinking actually help us imagine a world where you are going beyond these everyday, not everyday, but the systemic problems, as opposed to these imaginations in the absence of the understanding of what is the systemic issue that is keeping this
Which is also acting
together.
as a barrier in the whole.
So when like young people and decision makers come together to make sense of what are the issues,
but
and
also how power
understand.
plays out in that dynamics, and do young people really have the power to make their voice heard?
And this is something that young people have also recognized, that there is an issue, there's a communication gap between young people and the policymakers. And right now we are on the field trying to see if young people will be able to imagine alternate AI futures. And there some students in ITI spoke about and created a platform which will take their voice to policymakers, and they created like a whole system of how that will happen, and AI can help them in sort of like, imagine all young people of the country are on this platform and they're talking about their issues, and then AI is sort of segregating that into different thematics, and then it's given to young people where they vote the top 3 problems, and that problem, then there is a elected body which has young representation who take these problems to decision makers. So they are thinking about and they are imagining alternate AI usages, instead of just having having AI determine hiring or having AI determine your wages. They're thinking of good uses of AI as well, and this is what future thinking does. If they think about if we give spaces to young people and everyone, to be very honest, to think about how these big disruptions are affecting our lives and what do we want these disruptions to do in our lives, people can imagine alternate visions, and that is what the whole crux of, call it a mindset, call it a framework, call it a skill, but that is the crux of.
And some of
future
it is
thinking.
easier, like Aakash was saying earlier, when it's more shared and you're doing it together in a collective, probably it also is easier to imagine and think, as opposed to carrying the burden.
Which
by
also
yourself.
means you're working with the policymakers so that they make space for young people and more perspectives and voices to come in as well, right? There's a letting go also which has to happen.
Yeah.
So I think just talking about why we were doing this podcast to what is going to actually happen in this podcast, and we are having different conversations with different people, young people, experts from climate, AI, futures, and we are sort of bringing divergent perspectives, right, for new things to emerge. So when you actually bring diverging perspectives, new things, intersections emerge, and new thought is sort of there, and we also have, say, different hosts and not just one host. So this idea that there is not just one voice that's guiding the future, but different voices are guiding the future as well. So you will see these things in the podcast, but what else to expect from the podcast that we are doing?
I think one, just listening to perspectives of different people from different sectors as well. So technology, climate, civil society, How are we imagining futures? Also interesting conversations on even like things like even do futures even exist? And what does it mean for the present? So yeah, I think like a lot of dilemmas will also open up as we listen to some of these podcasts.
Yeah, I think for me, I think what stayed in when I was speaking to my guests was largely how connected and interdisciplinary everything is. So we were talking of technology, but we were talking of how technology and AI will impact worker rights. For example, what does it mean? What does it mean for mental health, which we all know today is emerging? What does it mean for young population? What does it mean for just like cultural paradigm, right? What does respect even mean in the idea of technology? Like a social influencer, social media influencer, is it a respectable job or not? Does it have rights or not? Does it have stability or not? So I think just this idea of how any one thing is connected to so many other things for me was interesting, and that is a theme that will maybe stay across all our podcasts, so you can look forward to that as well.
And I think finally, I think oftentimes our present determines our future, and I think we want to get the future to change our present. And I think that's what we are also trying to, drive through a dominant shift, that can we get futures to drive our present and not feel constrained by what is present. And that's what we hope to, bring about as a shift. So I think the idea of futures doesn't exist, it exists only in our minds. But how can that really, imagination really change what we do and think in the present, is what we are really going to unpack through these podcasts. So really inviting you to stay tuned, subscribe to our podcast, like it, share comments, and share it with others. Looking forward to listening to your views.